wrapping up 6-3. I put 3 extra examples here because in the textbook, that's board cooler. Okay, that's fine. I was making sure you weren't like just going to put that on your face. The textbook only gave 2 examples of this, and I feel like it's just a lot to take in, so I added 3 extra examples. Just a reminder, keep the goal in mind. The goal is to get the angle down to a reference angle. The reference angle is one of 3 choices, 30, 45, or 60. And that's because that chart tells us the trig values of those angles. So that's the goal, right? I can't tell you the trig value of negative 780 in my head, but I can calibrate it down to between 0 to 360, figure out my quadrants so I know my sines, and then think of my reference angle, and then I can tell you the trig values. Okay, so this one, negative 300, it says find all 6 trig values. Negative 330 is out of the scope of 0 to 360, right? So you could either draw it and get your reference angle, or you could calibrate it by bringing it back to a coterminal angle, then get your reference angle. To help you understand where negative 330 is, you think about it. So negative means what direction do I go? I'm going to go down. So this would be 90, 180, 270, 360. So it's somewhere in quadrant 1, right? So it's rotating and landing here. That's negative 330. If you don't see the reference angle from that, then find the coterminal angle. Add 360 to this, and what do you get? You get 30 degrees. Which means I already have my reference angle. If anything that lands in quadrant 1, by the way, when you calibrate it back with a coterminal angle, you have the reference angle right in front of you. So that means instead of focusing on this rotation and huge angle, I'm just going to focus on the gap between where it landed to the nearest x-axis, which is 30 degrees. Let's say 5 minutes in so I can get things started on an assignment. You're a really good class. Okay, so now I know I'm dealing with 30 degrees instead of negative 330. And now I'm going to find all 6 trig functions. So we've got sine 30, cosine 30, and tangent 30. Why am I not worried about the actual sign of my trig functions here? Because I'm in quadrant 1, right? Everything in quadrant 1 is positive. So if you need to make that note to yourself right here, like, okay, so we're in quadrant 1, which means everything's positive. You can. If you need to draw the triangle, I would suggest it. In quadrant 1, it's usually easier. The triangle would look like this, coming out and collapsing to the x-axis. This is 30 degrees. Remember yesterday I was saying, if you can memorize where the sides of the special right triangle measurements are, it is helpful. It kind of ties everything together and makes pre-cal easier. But if you cannot memorize it, it's okay because you have this chart. So I could answer all these questions right now. Sine of 30 is 1/2. Cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2. Tangent of 30, root 3 over 3. Then to get my 3 reciprocal functions, I would just take those and flip them and rationalize, right? If you were memorizing the sides, start with the short leg as 1, jump to the hypotenuse as 2, and then root 3 is the third side left to label. So right here, opposite of 30 is short, which means this hypotenuse is 2, and then the third side left is root 3. But again, you really didn't have to draw the triangle if you've got your chart. So what do we say? Sines 1/2, cosines root 3 over 2, tangent is, what was it? Root 3 over 3? You need to always put it in fraction. Yeah. Just remember the chart's going to be in fraction form, so keep yours as a fraction. Yeah. So now my reciprocal functions. Oh, not theta. It's 30. Secant. Cotan. Alright, so cosecant would be 2. Secant would be 2 over root 3. So rationalized. Did you get that? This one, this is why the picture is also helpful. This one, I'm going to have to flip it and rationalize it just like that one right there. But if I go to my picture, tangent of 30 was 1 over root 3. And then if I just flip that, I end up with root 3. Right? So that is where the picture might be helpful, because if it's one that's going to have to be rationalized, if you look at your picture and find the original function before it got rationalized, you might see it's easier. I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. I feel like everybody's okay with finding the sine, cosine, tangent. It's setting it up, getting the reference angle, and drawing the picture that I feel like y'all are struggling with. Maybe. So look at the next example. You've got 600 degrees. Calibrate that back to a number between 0 to 360 by taking off rotations, right? Then draw where it lands. So 600 is too big of an angle. I have no clue where that is. I'm going to take off a rotation, and I end up with what? 240. Let me change. Can I clear this? Can I clear the screen? Go good. All right. I'm going to take off a rotation. I end up with 240. That lands between 0 and 360. So now I can draw it. Okay, so to draw it, draw your quadrants. Always start on the positive x-axis. It's a positive angle, so I go what direction to rotate. I'm going to go counterclockwise, which means up. So this would be how many? How much have I gone so far? 90. What would this be? 180. What would this be? So I went too far, right? So I'm going to stop and just land arbitrarily in there. That's one. So this is 240. Right? Now ask yourself, the nearest x-axis is here, and what's that angle measure? 180, right? So what's the gap from 240 up to 180? 60. So there's your reference angle. Kind of hard for me to, I'll just draw it right there. You you go to find your reference angle and you don't get 30, 45, or 60, something's wrong. Because that's the whole purpose, is to have that chart. Okay? Now, this is too crowded. I was just kidding. I was just kidding.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you get this for me?
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah, I passed by the kangaroo and I just poured it.
Well, I'm straight up gonna drink that. Wait, I mean, I've already got that one. I'll be drinking that one in about an hour. Thank you so much. Huh? Yeah, I will. Yeah. Caffeine has a. I almost wonder if I'm ADHD and never just got tested because it calms me. I don't know why. My mom taught school and she had this kid with severe ADHD and she gave him a cup of coffee every morning and it would calm him. I know, yeah.
My mom has, what's that called?
There's something about it. I don't know what it is.
Maybe it's a balance.
Dude, I mean, I finished
Could be.
Balance of like, already.
Usually it's a stimulant, but if I'm already overstimulated, maybe it's got a nerve
That's how, what was it, like Benadryl? You can't take Benadryl?
Yeah.
To me, I used to like that one, and then that was
All right, so I'm going to draw my triangles separately because it was getting too crowded. So this is 60. Remember with the 30, 60, 90, find the short side first because it's 1. Then the hypotenuse is 2. Then the third side left is root 3, okay? So the short side is always opposite of which angle? In the 30, 60, 90, it's always opposite of the 30. So if that's 60, then this is 30. So here's the short side. Hypotenuse is 2. Third side left is root 3. Watch your signs. Where am I? I'm in quadrant 3. I need to adjust this. This is negative, and this is negative. Right? Back up. Quadrant 3. Got negative, negative. Lord. Okay, and then now you would find your 6 trig functions of 60 in quadrant 3. So you got sine 60, cosine 60, tan 60, then you got cosecant.
It doesn't make sense to count off
It is not your fault, but it's all
Did you bring enough for the whole class?
So she dropped 2 go rounds.
Yeah, it was
those are like onions.
Yeah.
No, they are.
Well, in quadrant 3, cosine and sine are negative. Because
All
tangent
round.
is the y over the x. Has everyone at least tried to find the reference angle for the third one?
Okay, yeah.
Did you get 45 in quadrant 2?
Yes.
Yes? Try, no, walk through it.
I didn't even do it. Okay.
So you would calibrate 495, too high, right? How do I calibrate? Take the rotation off. You end up with 135. Then you think of where that lands. So 135 lands in quadrant 2. And you ask yourself, what's the gap from 135 to 180? And it's 45. And then hopefully you go to your chart to answer the questions, or you could have the numbers memorized. For the 45, 45, 90, it's 1, 1 through 2. But don't forget you're in quadrant 2, so what's negative? The x is negative. Look at the next slide. It should be easy to find the exact trig functions of 30, 45, 60. I didn't mean to put 90 there, because you have your table, right? But if it's not, if it's an angle that doesn't have like a reference angle of 30, 45, or 60, then you just have to use your calculator. This slide is just to see, do you recognize when you're just going to use your calculator button? And the way to know that is, one, if there's a decimal, because none of our reference angles have decimals, right? So if there's a decimal here, you know that that's just straight up type button. And then two is if it's just something gigantic that if you do calibrate it down, you don't end up with 30, 45, or 60, then it's just type the button. Another hint is the directions will say round to 4 decimal places. That means you're hitting the trig button. You're not using the chart. The chart is there for when they want exact answers, which means fraction form. When they say decimal answers, they mean push the trig button. So all all of those up there, make sure your mode, of course, is in degree, because now you are hitting that trig button. So don't look up here. Try all of them, then look up and check your answers. Remember, when you get to a reciprocal function, I think you wrote this one, Adeline. That's the error. There's no reciprocal button. You have to remember what the reciprocal is. So secant of 500 will be the same thing as 1 over cosine of 500. Yeah. You have to do that before.
That's the one.
You want this one? So in the parentheses, you would type negative 135. Yeah, because remember, you can have negative angles. It just means negative rotation. Doesn't mean the actual angle itself is inverted. I'm coming along. Well, negative over negative is going to be positive. So don't enter negatives. It's root 3 over 12. I'll just make it do. If I'm not here tomorrow, I'll make it do. What I'm tomorrow night. So y'all are then working on your review. I don't want you doing 6-3 morning. I want you doing the review. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. You didn't get it? Okay. Breathe. Go to this. I will help you. It's probably just so flustered that you're making a simple mistake. You're just making a simple mistake. You did it. All right, look at example 9. Make sure, as you're studying for this exam, make sure you're reading the questions and you're understanding what the directions are asking. Because when we take the exam, you're not going to be able to raise your hand and say, Ms. Holcombe, is this where it's asking me to find it? You can't do that. So make sure you're reading the directions and keeping track of what does this mean for me to actually do. There's 2 examples from the text, and then I added 2 more to make sure you knew how to do it. This is the last slide in this section. Okay, so they're telling you, given the function value and the quadrant restriction, the goal is finding theta. You have to know what theta is. Theta means find the what? What does theta represent? An angle measure. Now you have to think to yourself, that means my answer needs to be an angle, not some decimal less than 1, right? You know what I mean? Okay. So look at what they say. A is sine of theta is this decimal. And then look at this part right here. This is their way of saying, I want you to stay in a certain quadrant. So you have to know where those quadrantal angle markers are so you know what quadrant they're talking about. If I'm between 90 and 180, I'm in what quadrant? 2. This means you're in quadrant 2. So let's draw a picture. It's a little crowded. Let's draw a picture. Right? We've got a rotation, opening up, landing in quadrant 2. We don't know the angle. That's what we're trying to find. And what is the nearest x-axis angle? 180. Okay, I'm just going to label. Alright, then you're going to go to your calculator. If I'm trying to get, now this decimal is so ugly, this means I'm not dealing with my nice 30, 60, 45 angles. I'm dealing with these random angles in there. That means you're using the trig button. So go to your calculator. What do I have to hit before I push sine to tell the calculator I'm looking for an angle? You got to hit second. So you're going to type in your calculator second sine, and then you're going to enter that decimal. What do you get? 16.3318, right? Okay, so let me make a note here. So sine inverse of some angle gave me 16 point, or what did you type? Sine inverse 0.2812 gave me 16.3318. And that's an angle, right? Yes? Okay, is that my answer? How do I know it's not my answer? 16 lands in what quadrant? 1. We need it to be in quadrant 2. So the 16.338, let me change colors. would be right here. 16 point, this is the reference angle, 3318. We need to know this. So subtract it from the 180 and you can see what that angle from that rotation was. So 180 minus 16.3318 is 163.67.
That's what happened.
Well, for this example, they didn't tell us how to round it. Now, here's the beauty of it. Now, check yourself. Go to your calculator and just push sine 163.67 and confirm that you get that decimal, and then you know you did it right. So I like these problems because although they do kind of make you slow down your thinking process, I like being able to go back and check them. So you just found that from here to here is 163.67. All right, let's do another. That was only the first example. Let's do cotan. All right. Cotan of some angle is this negative decimal. What quadrant am I in? 270 to 360 means I'm in quadrant 4. Draw a picture. So you've got some angle opening up, rotating, and landing in quadrant 4. And what angle is it the closest to? It's closest to 360, right? So you can see where 360 is going to come in. All right, now let's organize our thoughts. We've got cotan of an angle is this decimal. What's the reciprocal for cotan? 1 over. Okay, so I'm going to write the same thing. I'm just substituting. Right? Now, just like previous problems, I need this tan theta by itself, and I need this decimal over here. So these cross multiply. Right? That happened in some previous problems. Now I can go to my calculator. I'm going to evaluate tan inverse. So it would be second tan of this fraction, and then tell me what you get. Negative 80.85. Does it round to 85? Okay. So you end up with theta is negative 80.85 degrees. That's the answer, but it needs to fall in this range that they're telling you, okay? So think about it. If it was negative 80.85, then what would that positive angle be right there? How do I get it? Just do the 360 and then subtract off the 80.85, and it's going to land you at 279.15, and that's the answer. Second tan 1 over this. I'm going to show you these two answers so you can try it. And I will text y'all and keep y'all informed. There's those two answers.
Yes.